Our story starts in the Caribbean, but it ends in Leith. One dark night aboard the good ship Buck in 1718, oh by the way, the Buck was a sloop, as in, we sailed on the sloop John B. That's as far as we're going with that, right? The young surgeon, Archibald Murray, was awakened in quite an unpleasant manner, and his day was about to get really bad. In his own words, we'll find out what happened to him. He was waked by one of the crew giving him a stroke with a cutlass. And suspecting what might be the matter, he ran to the cabin where Captain Brisk was abed and told the captain he suspected the crew had mutinied and that they designed to have him in their power. That the deponent took 2 pistols from before the captain's bed, which he gave one to the captain and kept the other and stood his guard at the cabin door. Go, Archie! That 2 or 3 of the crew came to the cabin door with firearms and threatened the deponent if he should not surrender. That the captain informed the deponent that the pistols were not loaded. Top tip, if you are going to hold off a gang of angry mutineers with pistols, do make sure your pistols are loaded first. Health and safety. The sloop Buck had turned pirate. The young surgeon, Archie, is kept aboard because a surgeon is a surgeon, even if he did wave some pistols at you, empty or otherwise. Young Archie becomes what's known as a forced man. It's an important job description. Remember that. Now, who knows how to speak pirate? Of course you do. Arr, Jim lad. Actually, pirates didn't all talk like that. They had accents from Wales, Scotland, Ireland. There's even a Geordie pirate. No way, man. That's a Geordie pirate who spent quite a lot of time in Wales, actually. We think pirates spoke like that because of one character. It's a man called Robert Newton, a very famous actor, and he played the role of Long John Silver in the film of the book Treasure Island, written of course by that great Edinburgh author, Robert Louis Stevenson. Bobby Newton, as he was known, came from Dorset, and when he got the chance to unleash his inner pirate, he spoke in his native accent, Arr, Jim lad, which is why we think pirates to this day spoke like that. The pirates of the Buck tore about the Caribbean, basically being piratey. I'm sure I don't have to explain to you what the CV of a pirate is. There was a lot of running amok, pillaging, looting, burning, taking ships, getting some treasure. The Pirates of the Buck actually thought they were cut above everybody else. They actually called themselves House of Lords and gave themselves fancy titles. They dressed in velvets and silks and jewellery they had looted from the various ships that they had taken. And they drank a lot of rum. They drank an awful lot of rum, way above the medical guidelines. And they had a great time, it seems. I mean, it's a great life being a pirate, but it's a short one. There's not really a pension plan for being a pirate. Not really a retirement plan. Or is there? You see, there was a story that there was a pirate who had retired and managed to get away with it. His name was Avery, and he'd looted the great Mughal fleet of its diamonds, and it was said that he'd gone ashore and that he'd hidden in England and he'd gone to live in a village in Dorset. I know, I said not all pirates came from Dorset, but some of them went to live there, okay? Don't make a thing of it. Anyway, he hid in Dorset with his money, but the neighbours found out who he really was, and they extorted every single last penny out of him, and he died in poverty. But it didn't work for Avery, but it doesn't mean to say it couldn't work. Just one big job, just one big haul, and the boys of Buck could all retire. And they had that big haul. They did get that big job. Let me just explain what they got. They overhauled a ship called the Sagrada Familia. She was a Portuguese galleon, and she was stuffed with treasure. She had moidores aboard, like doubloons. They were worth thousands. And she had guineas aboard. Guineas that you could take to England and spend. She had 40,000 moidores and 50,000 English guineas. Arr, Jim lad. So it's possible, take your money. So the crew get together under the Captain Kennedy and they have a discussion, and they decide that what they're going to do is they're going to nick another ship that they think is more suitable for sailing back. They get a ship called the Eagle. They decide that they're going to let out for Ireland and that they will slink ashore, destroy the ship, take their money, go off and live as country gentlemen newly returned from the colonies. And on the face of it, it looks like a good plan. If only these guys had been any good at sailing ships. Sadly, they weren't that good. What happens is the Eagle gets caught in a storm and she gets blown into a loch in Scotland, a sea loch on the west coast of Scotland called Loch Craignish. And I like to think that maybe on that remote beach, on that loch, there was at least one pirate running up and down the sand going, this was your plan? This was it? This was it? There is nothing there. There's another frank and open exchange of views on the beach, I would imagine, and the band decides to split up. Kennedy decides that he's going to let out back towards Ireland, actually. But the rest of them, under the command of Roger Hughes, decide that they're going to try and make it towards Glasgow, go in this direction. Chance they might get a ship in Port Glasgow, maybe be able to go down south. So they split up and they start on their journeys. Inveraray, February 1720. Two pirates walk into a bar. Now, hang on. This is Inveraray, 1720, bar. This is not ranking highly on TripAdvisor, and I'm guessing the choice on the wine list is fairly limited. These two guys have walked from Loch Craignish to Inveraray, and they slam 2 coins down and say, give us all the hard drink you've got. Pull their hands back, and it's 2 moiders, 2 of those valuable coins. This is like trying to buy a Diet Coke with a bar of gold, right? The whole pub, I imagine, goes silent. Everybody looks at these 2 guys. Everybody in the bar looks at one another and says, you're not from these parts, are you? From that point on, all hell breaks out on the Argyll Peninsula because they realise they have a whole big gang of pirates on the loose. Where these 2 came from, there will be more because they found out. And they do catch them. They catch them all over the Argyll Peninsula. They even catch them as far as Glasgow. One of them actually gets to Glasgow. He's found in a bar. He's found in a pub. He's been there for 3 weeks. He's quite easy to arrest. These boys are not smart. So they round them up, 17, 18 of them, get them all together. And that is the beginning of the biggest pirate trial in Scotland. It's a sensation. It's like the best show in town. Everybody has to get in there, and particularly since the prosecution has a star witness. They've got young Archibald Murray, the surgeon, remember him? The forced man. It's also important to remember that young Archibald actually comes from a laird's family. Mummy's quite wealthy, lawyered up. As a result, Archibald is not condemned to death, but 10 of them are. You see, Archibald is useful because he points out which one is a forced man and which one was a blade of fortune. That's how they can tell. He's the prosecution witness. So they're condemned to death and they're hanged. They hanged Roger Hughes on December 14th, 1721. John Clark and the others were hanged in January 1722. And when John Clark and his friends were hanged, they could probably see the rotting corpses of the rest of our shipmates dangling from their gibbets as they were brought down. But John had a score to settle. When people were executed, it was quite common for them to be allowed to have last words. And someone would sit at the edge of the gallows and scribble them down furiously. So we know what John said, we know what his last words were, and we also know what the score was he wanted to settle, because this is what John said on the gallows. I cannot go out of this world with any peace of mind without declaring publicly that I think they are very much wronged and unjustly condemned. That's the other shipmates next to him. Sentence might very justly have passed on the doctor and me, for he and I were long engaged in these wicked courses. But as for these poor men, they were taken by us and others from their honest way of getting bread, and never did any of these things they were accused of, but as they were forced to the working of the ship. If they had refused, they would have been shot to death that moment. What he's saying is, Archibald Murray was not a forced man. He was a blade of fortune and should have been executed. There was only one that was reprieved, actually. It was Hayman Sully, and he was 17, and he wasn't reprieved because he was young. He was reprieved because he was on 3 different ships that got taken by 3 different bunches of pirates, and I think the judges decided he should have pursued a new career opportunity elsewhere. But the rest of them were hanged in Leith, and they were hanged within view of any of the ships leaving from the port of Leith, because the lesson was very, very clear as their corpses rotted on the gibbets. You stay a sailor, laddie. You stay on the right side of law and order. You turn pirate, and one day you'll wind up here, dancing on the end of some rope with the crows picking your eyes out. And where were they hanged? Come on, I'll show you. The pirates were brought here to be hanged, somewhere round about here. Probably partly underneath that building there. And that building, that's the Scottish Government building. It's full of civil servants and people who work for the government. And there are some people in Stirling who say that the remains of the pirates are still under there, which seems strangely apt for a building full of civil servants.